Welcome back to CFO Weekly, where we're talking with financial leaders about how to build efficiency in their teams, create time for strategy, and ultimately get results. With your host, Megan Weiss. Let's jump right in.
Today, my guest is Tony Zorc. As founder and CEO of Accounting Seed, tech entrepreneur, Forbes Books author, and CPA for 20 plus years, Tony embodies iconoclasm, the idea of challenging the prescribed way of doing things and coming up with a better, more innovative solution. Accounting Seed's success with over 15,000 users stems from Tony's vision for using technology to create better business in a way that's never been done before. A father, leader, and a person of faith, Tony brings a rare mix of personal and professional experience to the table and seeks to inspire other leaders to create innovation in places where innovation is scarce. Learn more about Tony's journey and read his resources for leaders at www.tonyzorc.com. That's TONYZORC.com. Hello, Tony, and thanks for joining me today.
Megan, thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to today's discussion. I had an opportunity to read your new book, Iconoclasm, a survival guide in the post-pandemic economy. And it was very interesting with a ton of great insights and recommendations for making better decisions by questioning our ingrained beliefs. I know, whether we're at home, school, or church, from a young age, we're taught to respect authority and to do what we're told, and often with no more explanation than because I said so. At least that was the way it was in my house. So today we're going to be talking about how we can break the habits that cause us to make decisions blindly and truly start to think about the choices we're making. So, Tony, let's get started.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep. First, tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, well, I'm a chief executive officer of Accounting Seed. We're an accounting technology company. We service clients typically in the mid-market, the small to mid-sized business market. And how I got to where I'm at really is I went to school as a CPA. When I was in college, I had interest in accounting, and there were tons of great jobs coming out of school in accounting, and everyone, my teachers and students, they're like, if that accounting stuff's hard, and if you like it, no one wants to do that. So you should go do that, right?
So
I'm like, I think it's pretty interesting. In fact, there's a lot of important decisions made off of this stuff. Do you realize that? And they're like, yeah, but it's complicated and boring. So I'm like, I thought it was interesting. So, I went to school. I got out of school, became a CPA in Michigan. I worked at BDO as an auditor, and then went into started climbing the department kind of career ladder, working for various corporations, went overseas working for a company as an international controller, and then really worked my way up to, I would say, like that super controller kind of VP position, where not quite a CFO in terms of doing, like shopping debt and public financing, but as a VP of finance. And then I decided what I was really passionate about was the systems behind accounting and automating and engineering that tighter month-end close, and just being lazy with technology in a way so I didn't have to do the work. And so I got into selling systems. I was selling Microsoft mid-market systems primarily, Great Plains, Solomon, back in those days. And then a unique opportunity came along my path. So I decided to build an accounting platform powered by Salesforce.com. And because all of the technology, Megan, that I was using really was designed in an old paradigm. And this is where kind of the iconoclast formula comes in, which is this paradigm is, systems, software works pretty much one way, and you should bend your business process to mirror the way the software we wrote works. And this is just a really different it's a very old paradigm. And my whole job as a consultant was implementing this software and finding that, best match of changing the client's business process as well as customizing the software in a very expensive way. And so I kind of learned how to write some code. I took on some partners and 12 years later, things have been going great. We've grown triple digit growth many of those years. We have over 1,000 clients and over 15,000 users. And it's been fantastic.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I'm always so impressed by just how many different roads there are with an accounting degree. I'm pretty much the sky's the limit. So that is the nice thing about an accounting undergrad.
There is, I think, I talk a lot about that with folks, and I think there's really three main paths. You got the CPA path, you have the CFO path, and you have this path that I'm on, which is this accounting systems path. And it's very powerful and so high in demand. So super great career paths. I've done all three of them. I've been I've been a CPA, I've been a manager in private companies and the systems job, and they're all really great paths.
So are there any particular stories or moves that really stand out in your mind as turning points?
Well, I think, it's interesting because when I was really bored as a CPA, and I felt like, in my career, I'm like, gosh, like I was wondering some days, like, am I an accountant or am I a lawyer? Because like what I do is review this stuff and make sure it's in compliance with these laws. And I'm like, I thought getting an accounting degree would be more like future focused, right? And stuff. So I think that was a big changing point in my career where I said, I'm really glad I have this experience, but I want to just be so much more future forward. And then, I went into, industry practice and, closed the books and really drove, managed cash flow and help companies perform financially. This is a super important role. But then, I think this turning point for me came into like, what am I really passionate about? And it was learning about all the technology behind that. So that was a big career changing point. And then certainly becoming an entrepreneur, enormous jump. And then, through the business life cycles, getting the business big enough where we could have a true SaaS-based model. When I started out, I didn't have any capital to invest in this, so I had to do a lot of services with the implementation of our product, and finally got to a point where we could run it without doing services. And then I had to recruit guys like me to work, and pick up our product. And so those were all really big stages. And now we're entering another stage where we've gone international. We're overseas now. So, and we're leveling up and really, having a brand new approach to the market. So all exciting, a lot of turning points in there.
I don't know if we've already touched on it or not, but you spoke a little bit about your company, Accounting Seed. Why did you develop it, and kind of what have been its big accomplishments since you started? Yeah,
so what happened was around like 2008, I had implemented about a half a dozen clients to, Microsoft Dynamics. And all those clients came back and said, we really need accounting to talk to a lot more applications. They need the financial dimension and these different systems where people are making decisions, particularly CRM. And so all 6 of these clients were using Salesforce.com for CRM. And so they hired me to build integrations. And when I got into this Salesforce stack, I realized like it took seconds for me to do what it took days to do on the Microsoft stack. And this was a cloud-based stack, and it was multi-tenant. So there was multiple other vendors in there. And I'm like, this is like the iTunes of the business world. This is insane. And that it wasn't just a CRM system, that this was a full computer stack, right? That you could build things on. So I'm like, oh my God, I should just build an accounting system on this. Then I can use all the tools that they use to mold processes for like CRM and services. I can actually apply those to the back office. Because Megan, no two companies like have the same sales process. So what companies like Salesforce had to do was develop a tool set where you could have your own data tables, your own rules, your own interface, because everybody's sales process is different. Whereas the back office is definitely more unified. However, so many people want those same customizations. And so what we're able to do and why we're so different and why we claim to be the first ever accounting platform is because of this ability that we provide all the functions of a normal accounting app, but we are truly a platform that you can build on. You can customize a tool set to your own requirements. And that's what's so different about us and why it's been so exciting and why we've had such great growth.
Yeah, it sounds like a brilliant idea at the time and something that's really worked out. So you recently published a book, Iconoclasm, a survival guide in the post-pandemic economy. For those who are unfamiliar with the term, what does it mean to be an iconoclast? And what inspired you to write this book?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I know it's kind of not a known term. I'm kind of trying to hijack it and take it from my own. But to me, an iconoclast is three things. There's someone who challenges the existing way of doing things. They design a better way to do it. And then they actually have the discipline to execute on that plan. And when I was talking with Forbes Books and, they asked me if I wanted to write a book, and I'm like, yeah, I'd love to write a book. I've always wanted to write a book. And I think everybody, Megan, should write a book because there's this whole exercise of putting words down on paper. You're like, crap, what am I about? Like, what is my main thesis? I thought it was this, but no, it's a really challenging thing to do, actually.
I imagine it is.
Yeah. And a lot of these business books from other CEOs, they don't write them. They have a ghostwriter write them. And I did not. I wrote this book. And so what I figured out in writing this book is really that this is what I've been about. And this is, I think, the recipe for success in that if you think about all the messages out in the internet, on the airwaves and television, almost all the messaging we have is none of this messaging is encouraging you to think for yourself on any level. So you have companies selling products that want you to buy a specific product. You have nonprofits wanting you to donate to their cause. You have politicians wanting you to vote a certain way. But there is actually no one broadcasting a signal out there for you to think for yourself because there's actually no commercial value in that for anybody. And it costs money to communicate these messages. And I just think that's everything wrong with what we have in the world today. And more content we have that can help people listen to these messages, but make up their own mind and challenge what's coming from these messages and what do these people have to benefit and what's right for you at the end of the day. We just don't have enough content out there for that. This is what I try to do in the book. And I think it's also a difficult thing to do, right? It's a difficult habit to form. And I try to give practical solutions on how to do this in the book. And I think that's what inspired me to write it and, why I wanted to write it, the whole purpose for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's so true. I mean, the media, social media, companies, they all have agendas. And, oftentimes we don't think about what's behind those agendas or whether or not those things are right for us.
Megan, exactly. I mean, that is exactly right. It's what is the agenda behind this company, this organization, this media, whatever it is. And you need to think about that. That's what's missing. We need to think about that.
Yeah. So tell us about your journey to become an iconoclast, and when did you really begin to relate to being an iconoclast?
Well, I think I have been doing this longer. I realized in the book I had been doing this a lot longer than I thought. And I think I actually learned it through athletics, even as a teenager. I was actually a competitive gymnast. On my social media yesterday, actually did a backflip, on my, because I'm doing a backflip for an accounting rap video. I'm trying to be the first ever accounting rapper. So that's coming out next week. You'll have to take a look. And Megan, my rapper handle is TZ Money. So that's I go
awesome.
by. So I've actually, so in gymnastics is this very unique sport where there's 6 events in men's gymnastics. There's the floor, the pommel horse, the rings, the vault, the parallel bars, and the horizontal bar. And it's a very odd sport in that it's all about creativity and doing things different. You do about 12 moves on each of these things. That's called a routine, and you get judged as to how well you do it, right? But there's so much reward in that sport for creativity. In fact, if you do something totally unique, you get to name it after you. And that's like the ultimate honor in gymnastics, which is, by the way, like almost impossible to do now, right?
I'm sure.
It's super hard. But so that sport is all about creating a unique routine. So I would design, so it would be the challenging of what other people are doing and trying to do things different was very much apparent in that sport as you're trying to find totally original moves. And then the design, you were really designing these routines, you're designing them to be different. And then the execution of it was such a big part of it. If I wanted to hit this routine in a meet, I had to perform it, 100 times prior to that meet. And so if I had 3 weeks, or if I had, 6 weeks or 9 weeks to that, I had to do X amount of days. And to do that X amount of days, and if I was putting in a new trick into the routine, I had to back up from there. So it taught me kind of project management and timeline in an indirect way, through that. So I think that's where I started doing this.
My son takes gymnastics too. I hope it's teaching him project management skills.
Well, awesome. He'll have to, I still do handstands, and you'll have to show him my backflip. So I'm 47 years old and I'm still doing the backflip. So
that is amazing.
I was proud that I didn't hurt myself.
I think I'd probably break my back at this point.
I was worried, I was gonna, and I'm doing the backflip in a tie, okay, in an office shirt, which is like surprisingly super hard. So.
Not very flexible material for sure.
It is not. It is not.
You've developed a 3-step process, something you refer to as the iconoclast formula. Can you expand a little bit on this? Yeah,
so the 3 steps it's really this challenge, design, execute. So challenge, design, execute, and really trying to just focus on that, because when, all these things in life, we get so busy, so distracted. And if we can just kind of remember this formula. So challenge, the first part is challenging, like you said, who is telling you this and what is their agenda? What is what is the thought pattern behind this particular thing? And asking, why is that? And looking in, thinking about the history of that, maybe researching it a little bit. So that's the first part. Design is thinking, what are my other options in doing whatever this endeavor is? I just had a video on how to drink a gallon of water a day. So this formula can be applied to anything. I applied the formula to that, right? So designing a solution. So taking in, and this is what software design has really done for me, is it's laid out what we call the requirements. That's everything you need done in this solution, and really clearly thinking through all those requirements and designing that, and then executing it is what's practical, what's going to work. And it all comes down to execution. All the time I talk to lots of folks, being an entrepreneur myself, they come up and and I'll be at a cocktail party and they'll come up, they're like, oh yeah, that's great. You're doing this business. And they'll say something like, I have an idea to do a business. I'm really thinking about it. And almost like they want you to be impressed that they're thinking about it. And it's nothing till you go to execute it. It's just nothing. It's just an idea. And that's just the difference between an iconoclast does all 3 of those things, whereas a thinker or, a dreamer may just do the first part of that, right?
Yeah.
So that's
the execution is the most important part, I would imagine.
It is. It really is. It really is. I call it, it's time for the showdown. Like in the Old West, when you have the showdown, you can talk about going to the showdown, you can think about it, but it's until you're going to go do it, it's not real. So it's all 3 of those things.
So let's talk about 2020. I know it's a year that most of us would like to forget, but what do you think of the US's reaction to COVID-19, and why do you think we ended up in such a state of panic?
Yeah, so I I clearly think in my book, I outline this. And in the book, I want to be clear, is not a political book. It is, I classify as more in the self-help area, even though it is, I would say, a little bit more slanted towards business readers, because that's my background. But so what happened with COVID was we were just as simple as we were completely unprepared for this. And, being unprepared and not really having any plan, we completely panicked as a society and just shut everything down. That was just the easy thing to do. When, panic kind of can be the appropriate response when you're in this situation, but that's the reality of what really happened here. I mean, I grew up in the Midwest where we did, tornado drills. I live out on the East Coast. We have evacuation plans for hurricanes. So there's some level of training and thoughts how to handle these things. So when they happen, you take care of them. Like when I was growing up as a kid in the Midwest and we were doing tornado drills, we would actually go out in the hallway, put our hands over our head in the hallway and be on our hands and knees. And the teachers would come by and judge our form on this, right?
I'm from Ohio, so I know, I know that drill well.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I'm talking about? So we've never done anything with pandemic or social distancing. I had never heard of the term till this, right? So we had this panic attack and just, our reaction to that was, just this feeling of being lost, and we've just drifted. And, I think we've swung from both extremes on this thing since it started. So, but that's why I think we ended up in a state of panic is because we didn't have any, preparation for this.
So given that, how do you think that we should have or can change how we reacted to COVID? God forbid that there's ever a next time, but how can we as an individual and a community and a country be better prepared for another pandemic or panic situation should one arise?
Yeah, well, I mean, to me, what I think we need is some kind of I view this as a dimension of the weather, like the wind, like rain. We have alert systems for tornadoes. When we have air quality ratings. We have, we can tell the pollen allergen ratings, right? And we have rating systems for this stuff. We have, when you have a tornado or a hurricane, we rate these on a scale from 1 to 5. I don't know why we can't do the same with something like this. And whereas, nobody goes out in a stage 5, hurricane, you'd be nuts. You'd be nuts to do that. And you have to leave the area. Right. So with something like this pandemic, half the people I've talked to are like, oh my God, this is a 1. Don't worry about it. It's nothing. Right. And then half the people are like, this is a 5. Your life's at stake. You're going to die if you get this. Somewhere in between is probably the truth. I talked a lot about this, and I think a lot of people I've talked to generally assessed, it maybe is in the 2 to 3 category, but this is, a matter of opinion. And then you have all the people listen to the science and all this. And so, but the reality is, I think, it's not illegal to go out in a hurricane. It's just stupid if it's a 5, right? And so the same thing should not apply to this. I think it's an insane overreach to make to not let you make your own decision on what to do, what's best for you, and your health. And that's my opinion. And I think, it's a time to respect other people's opinions too. So I don't want to get angry about it, but I think it's absurd that, we can't make our own decisions based on good information.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I feel like whether you were a 1 or a 5 in the beginning, it was hard to change people's minds once they'd made it up in the very beginning, even based on new data and information.
Well, because we're now in this super sphere of internet media where and we gravitate towards like the ideas and thoughts we like, and we just camp out in there.
Yeah,
right.
and then you're fed more of those ideas that you like.
And you're fed more of that, whatever that source is, right? Whether you're watching a right-wing thing saying, this is like a conspiracy, or you're watching something that's super, fear-driven, like you are going to kill somebody if you walk out of your house, like, and just camping there and hearing that same message over and over again. And what, so what I tried to do through this is really vary my media and use these sources of input as advisory, right? But make up my own mind, and get opposing views, right? Like, what is, does this make sense? What are the facts here? What the facts are that, 0.2% of the population, died from this, and mostly those under, 85 were not at great risk. And, this is, can you imagine something like spinal meningitis that kills an 18-year-old within 24 hours of getting it, right? That would be a 5, right,
yeah.
on the scale. We were nowhere near that, right? And this state of panic happened, but, people are not getting a variety of inputs. And also the other thing, Megan, that really was lacking, and I think this is where leadership comes in, is nothing in life is risk-free. I mean, I can walk out of my house and walk across the street and get killed.
Yep.
But it's a risk-return ratio, right? And I think in the business space, a lot of professionals are more familiar with this concept, but a lot of areas in life, people aren't. And if there's any risk, they're tend to just lock down and not kind of look at the risk return, right, with something like this. And we didn't have a lot of coaching in that. There wasn't a lot of, you had people saying, go in, go out, not a lot of in between, right? Not a lot of make up your mind what's best for you.
Yeah, I mean, I totally blame the media for 24-hour-a-day bombardment of worst case scenario.
Yeah, it is. I mean, when you have Chiron streaming across, just the death. I mean, if you're constantly just looking at the death toll, how do you focus on anything but people dying? Like, I mean, but the reality is people have been dying every day since we've been on the planet, and they continue to die every day, and people are born every day. You just don't have it front facing.
Circle of life.
Yeah.
And yeah, I love your advice to, get opposing views. Don't surround yourself with the same sound clip over and over again.
And use your brain. Okay, what makes sense for you, and what are you seeing? Like, does what's being said on the news really affect you? I mean, if who are you interacting with in the day? What is your real risk of what's going on here? And for some people, it's totally legit, right? Like, maybe you're a healthcare worker and you're dealing with sick people, and like you need this protection. You need, and you're overstressed. But there's a lot of people not remotely close to that situation. Don't even have to go 6 feet near anybody, but yet locked down, living in like complete fear.
Yeah.
Just because of the panic and what they're watching, and whatever message you tell yourself. I mean, I've learned this as an athlete. I've learned this as an entrepreneur. Whatever you tell yourself, you become. If you say, I can do it, you end up doing that. If you say, whether you can or can't, you're right. That saying is so.
I love that one.
Yeah. And
that's so true. You can convince yourself of anything.
You can, good or bad.
So switching gears a bit, are iconoclasts always inventors, entrepreneurs, or philanthropists?
No, they are not. And I actually cover this in my book, because I think there's a difference between an iconoclast and an inventor and an entrepreneur and a philanthropist. Now, those can overlap, but they are different things. And, a lot of times inventors are not iconoclasts because they don't actually execute on their inventions. They'll design it, but they'll hand it off to somebody else. And there'll be several entrepreneurs that actually take someone else's design or buy a business, that that challenges the way that the first two steps were done. Maybe that the business they're buying, is a different way of doing things. And they're really just the execution part of it, right? Or the philanthropist could be, it's really a philanthropist is someone who's trying to do something for society, and it may involve something original or not at all, right? So I think it's a case that a lot of times those folks are iconoclasts, but it's not. An iconoclast can be anything, again, anyone who does the challenge, design, execute formula. So it could be a mom trying to find a better way to educate her preschooler, get them to, to class, or it can be an inventor, anything in between.
And for all the entrepreneurs out in the audience, how can they apply the Iconoclast formula to identify and pursue better ways of doing things?
Yeah, so that's my book is so much about doing this formula. And I spend a lot of time on that first part, which is challenging the paradigm, challenging the existing paradigm. So the paradigm is really just the established way of doing things. And when you start to form a habit of challenging this, then you start to love change, because change is just all of the established ways of doing things are based off of stuff that's already happened, and what I call dynamics, which are belief systems, or they can be technology, they can be laws, they can be anything. Like the Earth is round, right? That was, it used to be, the paradigm used to be, it was, the Earth was flat. Now, I guess it is again, we have that paradigm again now, but until then people thought, the Earth was flat. So, these are major, that's just a change in belief system. So that opens up, that's a dynamic that things were based off of. And once that would change, things can change. So it's developing this habit of thinking that way, looking at and being organized in your thought pattern, being able to break those down and spot these. And once you develop that habit, you see opportunities everywhere. In fact, you are so overwhelmed with opportunities that you'll have to choose what's best for you to pursue as an entrepreneur. And it's exciting. There's no shortage of great business opportunities now. You should not be thinking, oh my God, everything's used up. No, every day a new one pops up. You just have to look for it and be able to spot it.
So it sounds like you don't believe that people are born iconoclasts, that they can actually learn the skill.
Yeah, I believe they can. I mean, I don't think I was born this way.
I feel like my son was. My son was. He's always questioning authority.
Yeah, well, then that's awesome. Then he would have a time, But the thing is, I think we're all born this way, but then possibly whipped into submission, right?
Maybe it gets beat out of
life.
us.
Like, it gets beat out of you, right? It gets beat out of you because people need you to do things, right? And you can't, questioning why and everything seems to slow down the pace. And it takes a loving parent to really foster and raise an iconoclast. I think that's what my father did for me. He wanted to raise all three of his kids to think for themselves. If you think about it, back to my original point, there's no commercial value for you to think for yourself. So it only comes from a place, probably a loving parent or someone who cares about you and wants you to be independent. So that makes sense that there's, maybe it's a teacher or a coach, or it's someone who actually really cares about you as a person, not just wants you to buy something or do something.
Yeah. So one last question, going back to the pandemic and your view of iconoclasm, but how do you feel like we've been changed as far as the way we navigate relationships and as consumers?
Oh gosh, yeah, Megan. So my book goes into this a lot of ways. I think the huge points are the workplace for knowledge workers is never going to be the same ever. We are not going to ever see anything like we used to do. The concept of driving to an office, working there 40 hours a week in person, I think is completely dead. I think There'll be certain use cases for that where you're new to a company. But technology has proven that we can work effectively in a business setting virtually, and that's going to stick. It's also proved that we absolutely hate this technology for personal relationships, and it's just awful. And we all been waiting desperately for this is the end so we can see people in person. And so this is horrible for personal relationships, but actually very effective for business. And there are so many ways we can introduce technology into commercial processes that are going to streamline and scale them immensely. So going to a bunch of these examples in the book, and that's what a lot of the fun of writing it was.
Yeah, I for one, am thankful for virtual workplaces that are here to stay. And yeah, I feel like the pandemic has kind of pushed along the digital agenda by at least 10 years as far as companies and websites and
absolutely, or permanently, or it never would have even happened, Megan. Like as a business owner, I can tell you prior to the pandemic, I had the mindset, if my employees are not in my office, they're not working. There's no way they're not working. And I do not trust them enough to let them work at home. No way. Now this pandemic hit, I was forced to do this over a year. And through being forced to do that, I realized, you know what, they are working at home. In fact, they might even be more productive. And I have to measure them differently. It can't be a clock in, clock out type of thing. I got to look at what are they doing? What are they getting done? And it's hard. It's hard as a manager to see that. It's also very hard to build a culture now with this virtual aspect. That's going to be very challenging for companies. But you know what I also realized is when they were in the office, I was kind of fooling myself that I actually knew what they were doing too. I don't know what they had up on their machine. I don't know how productive they were. I don't know if they were chatting or social media. I mean, so that was kind of an illusion too. So,
true.
I think a lot of this is being shattered, and you got to look for the truth, and it's out there, but it's just, you got to be more discerning.
Yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up. Look for the truth. So lastly, now that we're well into 2021, on a personal note, what's one goal that you're hoping to achieve in 2021?
Wow. Geez. Well, I'm doing...
Sounds like rapping might be one.
Yeah, so I got my rap videos out. I'm doing what I call Murph Climb. So I'm doing the pull-ups, push-ups, and air squats equal to the day of the year. So today... today's day 127.
Wow.
So I'm doing 22 pull-ups, 42 push-ups, and 63 air squats. So that goes up. So you don't want to talk to me in December. I'm going to hate life where I've got to do like 330 through 365. And I'm doing 4 5-day fasts this year. So I've done 2 of them. So I just don't eat for 5 days. Nothing, just water, or like tea. I have tea.
That sounds miserable, but I know there's a lot of benefits.
It's actually wonderful. It really is. When you train your body to do this, it's been great. Fasting totally removes the inflammation from your body, gives it a break. It allows it to heal. It's super, super healthy. And you have a lot of energy actually while you're doing this. So those are some of my personal goals, as well as getting my audio book done, the audio book version of this, as well as continuing blogs and doing fun interviews like this, Megan.
Well, that's awesome. And Tony, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, I've enjoyed speaking with you and hearing about your experience and advice regarding iconoclasm. The book was a great read, and I found it to be very good use of my time. So for all of those in the audience who are interested in reading it as well, where can they find the book?
If you go to tonyzorc.com and go on the author page, you can find it on Amazon or Books A Million or Barnes & Noble, or you can go directly to Amazon and type in my name. It's TonyZorc, or you can go to iconoclastbook.com. All those will take you there.
Okay, great. To all of our listeners, I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and please tune in next week.
If you're ready to boost efficiency and streamline your accounting processes at significant cost savings, it's time to talk with Personiv. Their people-powered solutions have transformed the delivery of back-office tasks and general accounting functions for decades, partnering with clients to provide everything from accounts payable to payroll services. See what Personiv can do for you by visiting personiv.com.
You've been listening to CFO Weekly, presented by Personiv. Please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts to hear all of our episodes. Want to learn more? Check out personiv.com. Thanks for listening.